All right, let's jump right in. We're about to travel back more than 1,000 years to meet one of Persian mythology's most terrifying figures. I'm talking about a king who became a monster, a symbol of tyranny so powerful that it still echoes today. This is the story of Zahhak, the Serpent King. So this is the image at the heart of the whole legend, and wow, is it a disturbing one. We're not talking about a king who just happens to like snakes. No, these two monstrous serpents are literally growing right out of his shoulders. It's a curse made flesh. And that, of course, is the million-dollar question, right? But the real story isn't just how he got them, it's what they cost him, and what they cost his entire kingdom. The answer reveals this timeless, incredible story about ambition, evil, and the ultimate price of power. To really get a grip on Zahhak's story, you have to know where it comes from, because this isn't just some forgotten fairy tale. Nope, it's a cornerstone of a massive epic poem that has shaped an entire culture for centuries. The story is a key chapter in the Shahnameh, which literally means the Book of Kings. This is the foundational epic of Persian literature. It took the master poet Ferdowsi over 30 years to write, finally completing it around 1010 AD. I mean, talk about a passion project. And when I say epic, I really, really mean it. The Shahnameh is absolutely immense. We're talking over 50,000 rhyming couplets. It's not just a story. It's poetry, it's history, it's folklore, all rolled into one massive work that preserves the soul of ancient Iran. And get this, for over a millennium, the Shahnameh has been painstakingly copied and illustrated by hand, turning each manuscript into its own unique work of art. It's a living piece of history, where the tale of Zahhak has always stood out as one of its darkest and most important warnings. Okay, so now that we know where the story comes from, let's get into the man, or the monster, himself. You see, tyrants like this don't just pop up out of thin air. The stage has to be set just right, and usually a power vacuum creates the perfect opportunity for darkness to creep in. So the whole thing kicks off because there's this power vacuum. The reigning king, Jamshid, had overseen this incredible golden age, but he got arrogant, declared himself a god, and boom, he lost his far, which is like his divine right to rule. The kingdom just falls into chaos. At the exact same time, way off in another land, you've got this young prince, Zahhak. He's ambitious, but kind of foolish, the perfect target for someone to manipulate. And notice how the corruption happens in these slow, deliberate stages. The devil, a figure named Iblis, doesn't just show up with horns and a pitchfork. No, it's way sneakier. First, he disguises himself as a wise friend and gets Zahhak to pledge loyalty. Then he convinces Zahhak to let him kill his father so he can become king. The final step? Iblis, now disguised as a chef, asks for one small favor, a kiss on the new king's shoulders. And that kiss becomes the final act of demonic transformation. And the cursed? Wow. It was absolutely horrifying and just bizarre. These snakes that sprouted from his shoulders couldn't be cut off. They'd just grow right back. And they were always hungry. Only one thing would pacify them: a daily meal of human brains. This is the moment a prince truly becomes a monster. You'd think people would run screaming from a guy with snakes on his shoulders, right? But the land was in total chaos, and the people were desperate for a strong leader. So they actually invited the Serpent King to rule them, trading one kind of chaos for a new, organized horror that would last for 1,000 years. Let's just put the scale of this terror into perspective. 1,000 years of tyranny. And for every single one of those years, 2 young people were executed every single day, just to feed the snakes on the king's shoulders. It was an era where good was evil and lies were truth. But even in that kind of darkness, you find these small acts of incredible courage. 2 of the king's own chefs were so horrified by their daily task that they came up with a secret plan. Every day, they'd sacrifice 1 youth and 1 sheep, mix the sheep's brain with the humans, and feed that to the snakes. Then they'd secretly help the spared youth escape into the mountains, slowly planting the seeds of a future resistance. And you know what they say about tyrants? Paranoia starts to creep in. Zahhak himself starts to sense that his end is near. He has this terrifying nightmare of a young hero charging at him with a mace shaped like an ox's head, dragging him off to a mountain prison. He wakes up in a cold sweat, knowing that this wasn't just a dream. It was a prophecy.
A prophecy is one thing, of course, but it takes real human courage to make it happen. After 1,000 years of this misery, the people's despair finally boils over, and a rebellion ignites. And it's led not by a prince or a general, but by an ordinary man who is simply pushed too far.
And this is where the story gets so personal, it's just heartbreaking. It all comes down to the grief and rage of one man, a blacksmith named Kaveh. Think about this. He had already seen 17 of his children sacrificed to the serpents. When the king's guards come for his last and final son, something in him just snaps. He storms the palace, demanding justice. In this amazing act of defiance, he's handed a scroll that proclaims Zahhak is a just ruler, and he just tears it to shreds in front of everyone. He then takes off his simple leather work apron, puts it on the end of a spear, and holds it high. That humble object, the Darash Kaviani, becomes the legendary banner of the People's Revolution. So Kaveh has the people fired up. He's got the banner. Now they just need a hero. And who do they find? None other than the young man from Zahhak's dream, Fereydoun. And it turns out, Fereydoun's own father was one of Zahhak's many victims. His mother had kept him hidden in the mountains his entire life, preparing him for this exact moment. And just like that, the prophecy becomes reality. Fereydoun has that special mace forged, the one with the head of an ox. With Kaveh's revolutionary banner flying high, he leads the people's army right to Zahhak's palace for the final showdown. Fereydoun smashes Zahhak with his mace and completely defeats him. But right as he's about to deliver the final killing blow, a divine voice stops him. He's told not to kill Zahhak. Instead, he is to chain him up deep inside a cave in Mount Damavand. The evil isn't to be destroyed, you see. It's to be contained. So the tyrant is defeated, but like all great myths, the story is far from over. In fact, its real power lies in its legacy, in what it has continued to mean to people for thousands of years. First off, the Shahnameh as a whole is just foundational. It's a pillar of the modern Persian language and a deep well of national identity for Iranians and so many neighboring cultures. And within that massive epic, the story of Zahhak stands out as one of the world's most powerful stories about the endless fight between justice and oppression. In fact, the symbolism is so potent that Kaveh's humble apron banner and the monstrous figure of Zahhak have been used as symbols of resistance against perceived tyranny throughout history, all the way up to the present day. And that brings us to our final and maybe most chilling thought. Fereydoun doesn't kill Zahhak. He locks him away in a mountain, where the legend says he remains still alive. It suggests that the potential for tyranny, that inner Zahhak, is never truly destroyed. It can only be confronted, defeated, and contained by the courage of ordinary people, a lesson from an ancient epic that feels more relevant now than ever.